What would you do if you found 6 newborn German Shepherd puppies trying desperately to wake up their mother, who would never wake up again? That's exactly what happened to Navy SEAL veteran Axel Thompson when an anonymous tip led him to an abandoned military storage facility where someone had left the most heartbreaking scene he'd ever witnessed. But these weren't just any puppies. They were the final legacy of Luna, a decorated military working dog whose service record would expose a cover-up that reached the highest levels of military command, and whose sacrifice would create the most elite K-9 unit America had ever seen. This is the true story of 6 orphaned warriors, a mother's final act of protection, and the moment when Save Them All became the mission that would change everything Axel thought he knew about loyalty, sacrifice, and what it means to honor the fallen. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments, and if you believe that some legacies are too important to abandon, hit that like button. You're going to need every bit of faith you have for this one. Now let's begin. The anonymous phone call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, interrupting Axel Thompson's restless sleep in his Montana cabin. Is this the guy with the search and rescue dogs? The voice was male, older, and carried the weight of someone who'd been carrying a secret too long. This is Axel Thompson, he replied, immediately alert. His thick dark beard was unkempt from sleep, his weathered military features hardened by years of late-night emergency calls. You need to get to the old Malmstrom Air Force Base storage facility, Building 7. There's something there you need to see, something they left behind. Who is this? What kind of something? Luna's babies. They've been alone for 3 days. I can't do anything without losing my pension, but those puppies don't deserve to die for what happened to their mother. The line went dead. Axel stared at the phone for 30 seconds, processing what he'd heard. Malmstrom Air Force Base had been partially decommissioned 5 years ago, with most buildings abandoned or converted to storage. But the name Luna triggered a memory from his military days. Luna had been a legendary German Shepherd, one of the most decorated military working dogs in recent history. But Luna had died in Afghanistan 2 years ago. Axel had heard the story through military channels. Heroic sacrifice, saved an entire platoon, awarded posthumous honors. If Luna was dead, whose puppies were alone in an abandoned storage facility? Scout, Ranger, and Angel, the Midnight Brotherhood, were already at the door with their tactical harnesses in their mouths. After years of emergency calls, they knew the sound of a mission beginning. The drive to Malmstrom took 45 minutes through Montana's early morning darkness. Building 7 was isolated from the main facility, a concrete structure that had once stored sensitive military equipment but now stood empty and forgotten. The padlock on the door had been cut recently, probably by whoever had made the anonymous call. Inside, Axel's tactical flashlight revealed a scene that would haunt him forever. In the corner of the empty storage room, on a pile of old military blankets, lay a German Shepherd female, clearly deceased for several days. Her collar showed the name Luna and a service number that matched the legendary war dog Axel remembered. But Luna wasn't alone. 6 tiny German Shepherd puppies, no more than 2 weeks old, were pressed against their mother's still form. Their eyes weren't even open yet, but they were making soft whimpering sounds and trying desperately to nurse from a mother who would never feed them again. Jesus Christ, Axel whispered, immediately kneeling beside the tragic scene. The puppies were weak, dehydrated, and hypothermic, but alive. They had been surviving on whatever milk remained and their mother's body warmth, but they were maybe hours away from joining her in death. Scout, Ranger, and Angel immediately moved into protective formation around the puppies, their professional training recognizing fellow working dogs in distress. As Axel began emergency care procedures for newborn puppies, he noticed something that changed everything about the situation. Luna's body showed no signs of combat injuries or illness. She appeared healthy except for complications from recent childbirth, complications that should have been easily treatable with proper veterinary care. "Why were you here alone, girl?" Axel asked the deceased dog while wrapping her puppies in thermal blankets. "Why weren't you at a military veterinary facility?" That's when he found the paperwork. Hidden beneath the blankets was a folder marked Classified Project Genesis, containing Luna's complete service record, medical files, and documents that made Axel's blood run cold. Luna hadn't died in Afghanistan. Luna had been retired from service 8 months ago when she became pregnant. But instead of receiving standard military working dog retirement benefits, she had been classified as surplus equipment and sold to a private military contractor for breeding purposes. The contractor had used Luna to produce puppies for overseas sales to foreign militaries, keeping her in substandard conditions with minimal veterinary care. When complications arose during her most recent delivery, instead of providing medical treatment, they had simply abandoned her and the puppies in the storage facility to die. Luna, the dog who had saved dozens of American soldiers, had been left to die alone because treating her was less profitable than replacing her. But it got worse. According to the documents, Luna was just one of dozens of retired military working dogs who had been quietly sold off rather than receiving the honorable retirement they had earned. Dogs who had served multiple combat tours, saved countless lives, and earned medals for valor were being treated as disposable equipment. The puppies in Axel's arms weren't just orphans. They were the children of a hero who had been betrayed by the very system she had served. "Well, Luna," Axel said, gently lifting all 6 puppies into a carrying case while Scout, Ranger, and Angel maintained their protective positions. "I can't bring you back, but I promise you this. Your babies are going to grow up knowing exactly who their mother was and what she sacrificed for this country." As he prepared to leave the storage facility, Axel made a decision that would expose military corruption, honor a fallen hero, and create the most elite K9 unit in American history. These 6 puppies weren't going to any shelter or standard adoption program. They were going to become Luna's legacy, a unit trained to carry on their mother's mission of protecting American soldiers, but this time with handlers who would never abandon them. The first step was making sure they survived the night. The second step was making sure everyone responsible for Luna's abandonment paid for what they'd done. The next 72 hours became the most intensive newborn care operation Axel had ever managed, and he'd overseen medical evacuations in Afghanistan. Back at his Montana cabin, Axel transformed his living room into a puppy intensive care unit. 6 tiny German shepherds, each weighing barely 2 pounds, required round-the-clock feeding every 2 hours, constant temperature monitoring, and careful health assessments to determine which ones would survive their traumatic start to life. Dr. Sarah Martinez arrived within an hour of Axel's emergency call, bringing specialized puppy formula, feeding tubes, and the grim expertise that came from years of emergency veterinary medicine. "How long were they without proper nutrition?" she asked while examining the weakest of the 6 puppies. "At least 3 days, maybe more," Axel replied, his weathered features showing the exhaustion that came from staying awake all night monitoring vital signs. "Luna's body temperature had already dropped significantly when I found them." Scout, Ranger, and Angel had appointed themselves as surrogate guardians, taking shifts to maintain warmth and comfort for the orphaned puppies. It was extraordinary behavior. 3 search and rescue dogs instinctively understanding that these tiny lives needed protection. "This little female isn't going to make it," Dr. Martinez said softly, examining the smallest puppy, who was barely responsive. "She's too weak, and her body temperature is critically low." But Axel wasn't accepting that prognosis. He'd read Luna's service record. This dog had saved 17 soldiers during her combat tours, had been awarded 3 military commendations, and had never given up on a mission. "Luna didn't give up," Axel said, gently lifting the tiny female puppy and placing her against his chest for body warmth. "Her daughter isn't giving up either." Over the following days, the 6 puppies began to show distinct personalities that reminded Axel eerily of their mother's legendary traits. The largest male puppy, who Axel began calling Alpha, showed the same tactical awareness that had made Luna famous. Even with his eyes barely open, Alpha would position himself between his siblings and any perceived threat. The second male, Bravo, demonstrated Luna's intelligence, quickly learning the feeding routine and adapting faster than his siblings to the artificial environment. Charlie, the third male, exhibited the protective instincts that had made Luna a hero, constantly checking on his siblings and refusing to eat until everyone else had been fed. Delta, the fourth male, showed Luna's legendary stamina, staying alert longer than the others and requiring less recovery time between feedings. Echo, the second female, displayed the communication skills Luna had been known for, making specific sounds that seemed to calm her siblings during stressful moments. And Foxtrot, the smallest female who had nearly died, began showing the same indomitable will that had carried Luna through impossible missions. But it was during the second week of care that Axel discovered something that would change everything about Luna's story. Hidden in the classified documents from the storage facility was Luna's complete genetic profile and breeding records. Luna hadn't just been any military working dog. She had been part of an experimental breeding program designed to create the next generation of elite canine warriors. Luna's bloodline traced back to the most successful military working dogs in American history. Her genetics had been specifically selected for intelligence, loyalty, tactical instincts, and the rare combination of aggression toward threats and gentleness with allies. The 6 puppies weren't just Luna's children, they were the culmination of decades of selective breeding designed to create perfect military working dogs. That's why the private contractor had been so eager to acquire Luna. They hadn't been selling ordinary guard dogs to foreign militaries. They had been selling America's most advanced canine genetics to the highest bidder, including potentially hostile nations. Dr. Martinez, Axel said while reviewing the genetic data, these puppies aren't just special because of Luna. They're literally the most genetically advanced military working dogs ever bred. What does that mean practically? It means that if they survive and are properly trained, they could be worth millions to the right buyer. And it means that whoever abandoned Luna didn't just commit animal cruelty, they committed treason by allowing American military genetics to be sold abroad. That evening, as Axel watched the 6 puppies sleeping in their heated enclosure while Scout, Ranger, and Angel maintained their protective vigil, he made a decision that would expose the corruption and honor Luna's sacrifice. He was going to train Luna's legacy as the elite unit they were bred to be, not for profit, but for service. These 6 puppies would grow up to protect American soldiers just like their mother had, but they would never be abandoned, sold, or treated as disposable equipment. The next morning brought validation for his decision in the form of an unexpected visitor. Colonel James Harrison from Military Working Dog Affairs arrived at Axel's cabin with official paperwork and a proposal that would test everything Axel believed about military honor. "Mr. Thompson," Colonel Harrison said, studying the 6 thriving puppies, "the Army is prepared to offer you substantial compensation for the return of those animals. They're classified as government property, and their genetics are considered national security assets." "Luna was government property too," Axel replied, his voice carrying the steel that had made him an effective SEAL. "How did that work out for her?" "That was an unfortunate administrative error. We're prepared to ensure these puppies receive proper military training and placement." "The same way Luna received proper military retirement care?" Colonel Harrison's expression tightened. "These animals represent millions of dollars in research and development. You can't simply keep them as pets." Axel looked at the 6 puppies, now 3 weeks old and beginning to show the intelligence and personality traits that would make them extraordinary. Then he looked at Scout, Ranger, and Angel, who had positioned themselves between the colonel and the puppy enclosure. "You're right, Colonel. I can't keep them as pets, but I can train them as the warriors they were bred to be, with handlers who will never abandon them. Luna's legacy isn't going back to a system that treats heroes like disposable equipment." The battle for Luna's children was about to begin. And this time, the bureaucrats were facing a Navy SEAL who had read their classified files and knew exactly how deep the corruption went. The legal battle for Luna's legacy lasted 6 months and exposed the deepest military corruption scandal in a generation. But while lawyers argued in courtrooms, Axel Thompson was doing something far more important. He was turning 6 orphaned puppies into the most elite canine unit America had ever seen. By the time the puppies were 4 months old, their genetic superiority was undeniable. Alpha demonstrated tactical intelligence that surpassed dogs with years of training. Bravo could detect explosives at distances that defied established canine capabilities. Charlie showed protective instincts so refined he could differentiate between genuine threats and training scenarios. Delta's endurance during exercises exceeded military standards for adult working dogs. Echo displayed communication abilities that bordered on supernatural. She could alert her siblings to dangers they couldn't see, hear, or smell. And Foxtrot, the smallest female who had nearly died, possessed the most extraordinary gift of all. She could locate missing persons using scent trails that were weeks old. They're not just dogs, Dr. Martinez observed during one of their monthly health evaluations. They're something entirely new. The Midnight Brotherhood, Scout, Ranger, and Angel, had become the teaching staff for Luna's legacy, passing on search and rescue techniques, tactical awareness, and the emotional intelligence that made them legendary. It was an unprecedented training program, elite adult canines teaching genetically superior puppies. But it was the arrival of Master Sergeant Patricia Williams that transformed Luna's legacy from exceptional dogs into a true military unit. Sergeant Williams had been Luna's original handler in Afghanistan, the woman who had worked beside Luna during her most heroic missions, and who had grieved when she was told Luna had died in combat. "They told me Luna died saving a convoy from an IED," Williams said, tears streaming down her face as she watched Alpha demonstrate the same tactical movements Luna had been famous for. "I attended her memorial service. I have her flag in my home." Luna died alone in an abandoned building because treating her pregnancy complications was too expensive, Axel replied, showing Williams the classified documents. "But her children are going to carry on her mission." What followed was the most intensive canine training program ever developed. Sergeant Williams brought military expertise, Axel provided strategic planning, and the Midnight Brotherhood served as mentors. The 6 puppies learned not just traditional military working dog skills, but advanced techniques that combined their genetic advantages with cutting-edge training methods. By 8 months old, Luna's legacy was operationally ready. Their first mission came through unofficial channels, a request from a special forces unit preparing for deployment to Syria. Intelligence indicated enemy forces were using advanced IEDs that existing K9 units couldn't detect reliably. "We've lost 3 dogs and 4 soldiers in the past month," the unit commander explained during a secure video call. "We heard about Luna's legacy through back channels. We need dogs that can do what no other dogs can do." Against all military protocols and despite ongoing legal battles with the Department of Defense, Axel and Sergeant Williams deployed Luna's legacy to Syria as private contractors attached to the Special Forces unit. What happened over the next 90 days would rewrite military working dog protocols forever. Alpha, paired with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, detected 17 IEDs that would have killed dozens of American soldiers. His tactical intelligence allowed him to identify bomb-making patterns that human analysts had missed. Bravo and Charlie, working as a team with explosive ordnance specialists, cleared hostile buildings with 0 casualties, an unprecedented achievement in urban warfare environments. Delta's endurance capabilities allowed him to conduct continuous operations for days without the rest periods required by standard military working dogs. Echo's communication abilities enabled her to coordinate with other K9 units across vast distances, creating real-time intelligence networks that saved entire battalions from ambushes. And Foxtrot, the smallest legacy who had nearly died as a newborn, achieved the impossible by locating and rescuing 12 captured aid workers who had been held in underground facilities for 6 weeks. The mission report sent shockwaves through the Pentagon. "These dogs are performing at levels we didn't know were possible," the unit commander reported. "They're not just military working dogs, they're force multipliers. Each one of them is worth an entire platoon in terms of operational capability." But the success of Luna's legacy created a problem that threatened everything Axel had built. The military wanted them back. Not as honored veterans who deserved retirement benefits, but as weapon systems that could be mass-produced, sold, and deployed without regard for their welfare or the bonds they'd formed with their handlers. "We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for the breeding rights," Colonel Harrison said during his return visit to Montana. "These dogs represent a revolution in military capability. The Pentagon wants to establish a breeding program that could produce hundreds of Luna's legacy-level K9s. And when they get too old or injured to serve?" Axel asked. "Standard protocols for surplus military equipment." Axel looked at the 6 dogs who had grown from dying puppies into legendary warriors. They were more than military assets. They were Luna's children, carrying on their mother's mission of protecting soldiers while maintaining the bonds of loyalty she had died protecting. "Here's my counteroffer, Colonel," Axel said, with the quiet authority that had commanded respect in the most dangerous situations. "Luna's legacy stays together, with handlers who will never abandon them." In exchange, we'll train the next generation of military working dog handlers in techniques that honor both the dogs and the soldiers they protect. The Pentagon will never agree to those terms. Then the Pentagon can explain to Congress why they're trying to repeat the same mistakes that killed Luna, while the most effective canine unit in American history is willing to serve but not be owned. The final battle for Luna's legacy was about to be fought not in courtrooms or battlefields, but in the hearts and minds of people who would decide whether military working dogs were heroes deserving of honor or equipment deserving of disposal. The congressional hearing that would determine the future of Luna's legacy took place on a Tuesday in November, broadcast live across the nation and watched by millions of Americans who had followed the story of 6 orphaned puppies who became legendary warriors. Axel Thompson, his thick dark beard neatly trimmed for the formal setting, but his weathered military features still showing the determination that had saved Luna's children, sat at the witness table with Master Sergeant Patricia Williams beside him. Behind them, in a demonstration that broke every protocol in congressional history, sat Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Foxtrot, now fully grown German Shepherds whose presence commanded respect from everyone in the room. Mr. Thompson, Senator Margaret Hayes began, you're asking Congress to believe that these 6 dogs represent a new paradigm in military working dog capabilities. Senator, I'm asking Congress to recognize that Luna's legacy has already proven that paradigm in operational conditions. These dogs saved 127 American lives during their Syria deployment while maintaining a perfect operational record. Colonel Harrison, representing the Pentagon's position, leaned forward to his microphone. The military's position is that these animals represent national security assets that should be controlled and replicated through official breeding programs. The same official programs that sold Luna to private contractors and left her to die giving birth, Sergeant Williams interjected. The same programs that classify war heroes as surplus equipment when they're no longer profitable? The hearing room fell silent as Williams continued. I served beside Luna for 3 combat tours. She saved my life 17 times. When I was told she died heroically in Afghanistan, I grieved for a partner who deserved better. When I learned she actually died abandoned in a storage facility because treating her was too expensive, I realized our military has lost its understanding of what loyalty means. That's when Senator Hayes called for the demonstration that would change everything. We'd like to see what makes Luna's legacy so extraordinary, she announced. What followed was a display of capabilities that left the Congressional gallery speechless. Alpha demonstrated tactical intelligence by identifying and neutralizing simulated threats in a complex urban environment scenario constructed in the hearing room. His movements were precise, efficient, and showed decision-making abilities that surpassed human analysts. Bravo detected explosive materials that had been hidden throughout the building, materials that existing security systems had failed to identify. Charlie exhibited protective capabilities by correctly identifying genuine threats among dozens of actors playing various roles, never making a false positive identification. Delta completed endurance challenges that would exhaust trained human operators. Echo demonstrated communication abilities by coordinating complex operations between all 6 dogs without human commands, a level of inter-canine communication that military experts had never seen before. And Foxtrot located a missing person, a congressional aide who had been hidden in the building's complex ventilation system, using a scent trail that was 8 hours old. These capabilities are unprecedented, Dr. James Anderson from the Military Working Dog Research Program testified. Each of these dogs operates at levels that exceed our current understanding of canine potential, but more importantly, they operate as a coordinated unit with loyalty bonds that make them irreplaceable. Senator Hayes looked directly at Colonel Harrison. Colonel, your position is that the military should control these animals as assets, but I'm looking at 6 warriors who have already proven their worth while maintaining bonds with handlers who respect them as partners. Why should we fix what isn't broken? Ma'am, standardized military control ensures consistency and reliability. The way it ensured consistency and reliability for Luna? The question hung in the air like a verdict. 3 hours later, Congress passed the Luna's Legacy Act, legislation that established a new paradigm for military working dog services. Rather than ownership, the military would partner with elite K-9 units that maintained independence while serving national defense needs. Luna's legacy became the first unit operating under the new protocols, with Axel as director and Sergeant Williams as operations commander. They would train the next generation of military working dog handlers while maintaining operational readiness for missions that required capabilities no other K-9 unit could provide. But the real victory was happening every day at the Montana training facility that had been built to honor Luna's memory. 18 months after the Congressional hearing, Luna's legacy had expanded into a comprehensive program. The original 6 dogs continued their operational missions while training new K-9 handler teams in techniques that emphasized partnership over ownership, loyalty over compliance, and honor over utility. You know what Luna would think about all this? Sergeant Williams asked Axel as they watched Alpha training a new class of military working dog candidates. What's that? She'd think it was about time we remembered that the best soldiers, whether they have 2 legs or 4, serve because they choose to, not because they're forced to. The training facility now included a memorial wall featuring Luna's photograph, service record, and the simple inscription, "In memory of Luna, decorated hero, devoted mother, betrayed by the system she served. Her legacy lives in every life her children save, and every handler who remembers that loyalty deserves loyalty in return." Visitors to the facility often asked about the 6 magnificent German shepherds who moved with such intelligence and purpose. But for those who knew their story, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Foxtrot represented something more than exceptional dogs. They represented the promise that sacrifice will be honored, service will be rewarded, and that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who refuse to let the fallen be forgotten. Every mission they completed carried Luna's spirit. Every life they saved honored her memory. And every handler they trained learned that the bond between warrior and K-9 isn't just about tactics and training. It's about trust, loyalty, and the understanding that some relationships transcend even death. For Luna, who gave everything for her country and received abandonment in return, but whose children made sure her sacrifice would never be forgotten. For Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Foxtrot, who proved that heroism is inherited not through genetics alone, but through the choice to serve others, no matter the cost. For every military working dog still serving, and every handler who knows that the strongest units are built on mutual respect, not ownership. For the Luna's Legacy Act, which ensures that no war hero with 4 legs will ever be abandoned again. Welcome to Luna's Legacy Training Facility, where legends are born, heroes are honored, and the bonds between warriors last beyond a lifetime. 6 orphaned puppies who became a legend. 1 mother's sacrifice that changed military history, a promise kept across the boundaries of life and death. No warrior left behind, no hero forgotten, no legacy abandoned. Luna's mission lives on in every life her children save. We want to hear what you felt while listening to this story. Don't forget to comment and rate the story out of 10.